guaranteed job, housing, and benefits for life. These enterprises were inefficient, their benefits costly, and they often made products no one wanted. They were losing the government vast sums of money, but they were the backbone of communism. Zhao Ziyang asked a group of young economists to tackle the problem.
The iron rice bowl was a common problem. It didn't matter if you worked well or badly. It didn't make a difference whether factories were efficient or profitable or not. And workers' salaries were all the same. So why should you work?
It was very hard to fire a worker. The Public Security Bureau ordered managers to rehire workers, since they might create social unrest. Some people who lost their jobs even went to their boss's home and said, "I have nothing to eat. You still have food, so I am eating with you."
Few workers dared give up the security of their iron rice bowl.
Nobody wanted to give up his job and jump into the sea, as the saying goes, which means doing business on your own. Not one of my friends had the guts to do so.
By 1988, workers were growing nervous as they saw inflation eat into their fixed wages. And they grew angry as they saw government officials use their connections to make fortunes. From the families of top party leaders to local village officials, corruption riddled society.
We were not sure what to do next. Our leaders were pretty frank about it. They admitted they were crossing the river by touching the stones. This means that if you want to cross the river but don't know how deep the water is, you have to feel for the stones every step you take. Otherwise, you may fall into deep water and drown.
The leaders of the Central Committee started to say that we needed to experiment, that this was the first stage of socialism and that mistakes were inevitable. My in-laws, who were mid-level government officials and had worked for the party for decades, began to criticize Deng more openly and said that he had made a mess.
But in the communist system, people had no way to make their voices heard. In the spring of 1989, a chance came. Hu Yaobang, the popular leader ousted 2 years earlier, suffered a heart attack. He died on April 15, 1989.
When Hu Yaobang passed away, this anger which had been suppressed exploded. All of a sudden, overnight, the campus was full of big posters.
In the days following his death, students in Beijing flocked spontaneously to Tiananmen Square to pay tribute to Hu Yaobang. They seized the occasion to make political demands for freedom of speech, for the right to form student unions, and for an end to government corruption. The official memorial service for Hu Yaobang was on April 22nd in the Great Hall of the People. During the service, thousands of students waited outside.
When the service in the Great Hall of the People ended, everybody was very hesitant. If we just went home, we would have felt as if we hadn't expressed our feelings.
Zhao Zhou Yongjun and several other students were allowed through the police lines. They tried to give the government a petition with their demands.
The other two went up to the front of the Great Hall of the People and knelt. All I could do was follow them and kneel, but I only knelt on one knee. I felt humiliated. All kinds of feelings welled up in my heart. I stood there and cried silently. My tears were running down non-stop.
The young men waited on their knees for nearly an hour. No official came to receive them. The emotional impact of the students kneeling in supplication to the government fueled more protests in the following days. But on April 26, 1989, in an editorial in the People's Daily, Deng warned the students to stop the demonstrations. He condemned their activities as turmoil.
The People's Daily is the mouthpiece of the Chinese Communist Party. This editorial represented the view of the Central Committee, the views of the leaders. That's why this kind of editorial gets so much attention in China. It's just like the party giving orders to the whole country.
We were outraged when we learned that the Central Committee had labeled the student movement turmoil. We had gone to the streets only to express our feelings. We all wished the best for our country. We never wanted to bring down the government.
For the first time since the founding of the People's Republic of China, the people refused to be intimidated by an official condemnation. The next day, a line of students 4 miles long marched to Tiananmen Square.
Often at the intersections, we were confronted by the police. But the students broke through each police line one by one. We marched through all the intersections just like that. I remember that while we were marching on the overpass at Fuxingmen, I looked down at the streets below and saw the long, long lines of students. And I felt a special thrill in my heart. It was really fun. I felt that we had the support of the whole city.
On May 13th, a few hundred radical students donned white headbands and marched to Tiananmen. They camped in the middle of the square and began a hunger strike. Thousands more students